doing? Can you hear me okay? Or do we need to turn it up? Turn it up a little bit? Are you good? Good? Okay. So I wanted to take a minute to welcome everybody. My name is Jumana Salami. I'm the Deputy Director here at the Arab American National Museum. I would like to start with the recognition that the Arab American National Museum is located on Anishinaabe Indigenous Peoples land next to Detroit, the largest majority black city in the nation with a long legacy of African diasporic global contributions and at the heart of the region with the largest concentration of Arab Americans. All right. On behalf of the Arab American National Museum and all of the Concert of Colors partners, I want to thank you for being here for the Forum on Community, Culture, and Race, State Violence, Trauma, and Healing Through Art. I'd like to also thank our sponsors, Meyer, Comerica, the Knight Foundation, the Community Foundation for Southeast Michigan, Ford, DTE Energy Foundation, and MGM Grand Detroit for their generous contributions to make this incredible festival possible each and every year. Every year at Concert of Colors, we host this forum to discuss issues that are affecting the communities we serve. As a community-based museum, we first and foremost want to create a safe space for dialogue through art and culture, not just within our community, but between the rich and vibrant communities that are integral part of the cultural fabric of Metro Detroit. Tonight, we have a very exciting lineup of performances and discussions planned for you, including poetry, music, dance, and dialogue. The artists and activists we have here tonight will draw on their diverse sets of experiences to talk about the role of art as a tool for advocacy and community building, a theme not only for this forum, but a central part of our mission here at the Arab American National Museum and its parent organization, Access. In fact, tonight's topic gets at the heart of the work of Access, which is dedicated to empowering communities to improve their economic, social, and cultural well-being. I would like to now introduce Access CEO Hassan Jabir.
Good evening. Are we ready for the Concert of Colors? So, I want to welcome all of you. And this Concert of Colors and this forum are great examples of what Access aims to do, especially making space for art and cultures to intersect with advocacy and community building. The Arab American National Museum, one of Access national institutions, represents the art and culture side of our work, the others being social services, philanthropy, advocacy. Tonight, keynote speaker exemplifies all 4 areas of Access work, and frankly, much more. Through her research and subsequent advocacy, she has displayed a commitment to equity, justice, and public health that is remarkable as it is heroic. It's still impossible to estimate the long-term impact that she has had on the people of Flint, or how far-reaching the effects her advocacy will be. The Flint water crisis is now served as a glaring reminder that public health and advocacy must always inform each other. You know, for the ones who were impoverished and denied decent living. For the ones who are the target of hate and discrimination. For the ones who are denied justice and equity. We can only overcome by resisting. Dr. Mona Hanna-Attisha is an inspiring example that we can learn from. You know, to have a good fight, you have to be on the ground and you have to be in the trenches. Many nowadays think that social media is the place to fight. You actually have to be on the ground and in the trenches. Second, to have a good fight, you have to endure pain and sacrifices. Third, you have to be in a good fight. You need to know that it has to be strategic and long-term. Mona, we can learn from her example of advocacy because she endured and sacrificed, and she knew that this is a fight for the long run. And she also knew that she has to be in Flint, in the trenches, in the communities being suffered. In 2016, she was named one of Time magazine's most influential people on earth. She was named a champion of justice by Access, received the Rose Nader Award for Arab American activism by the American Arab Anti-Discrimination Committee. She just told me that her few chapters in the book are in Arabic. Her new book, What the Eyes Don't See, a story of crisis, resistance, and hope in an American city, is a gripping first-hand account of the Flint water crisis. If you want to hear the full story from discovery to cover-up, read this book. They are available here for sale. With infinite gratitude and appreciation, please join me in welcoming the heroic and inspiring public health doctor and author, Dr. Mona Hanna-Attisha.
Thank you. Shukran. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It is an absolute honor to be here at my favorite museum, the Arab American National Museum, and to be here at the Concert of Colors. Thank you for the very kind remarks. Hassan Jabbar, thank you, I love you. So if you haven't figured out, which I'm sure you did by the introduction, by the shukran, by my outfit, my galabiya, I'm Arab American. I'm a first-generation immigrant. We came to this country when I was 4 years old, so I wasn't supposed to be here. I was not born here. At that time, Saddam Hussein, you guys remember him, Saddam Hussein was the brutal dictator of Iraq. The senseless Iran-Iraq war had just started and would kill over 1 million people. My parents saw and feared the cult of personality, the sidestepping of norms, the daily brutality, the scapegoating of minorities, the intense militarism and nationalism, and the manipulation of truth that characterized the rise of fascism in Iraq. Maybe they could look ahead and see the country's slow and bloody spiral. So we came here. We came to the United States as immigrants in 1980. We were basically refugees. in search of a peaceful and prosperous place for my brother and I to grow up. We were in search of what all immigrants are in search of: freedom, opportunity, democracy. We were in search of that American dream. And we eventually settled here in Metro Detroit with thousands of other Arab Americans who were in search of that same dream. And at that young age, I never remotely thought to dream an American dream. But all of a sudden, every day, I was lucky. I was lucky to wake up to America. And I saw this country with the fresh eyes of a little girl who was filled with excitement and fear and so much hope. And at that time, I was absolutely embraced by Lady Liberty. Not imprisoned, not traumatized, not separated from my parents, not vilified, not like today's immigrant children. And I grew up confident and competent and proud of the diversity that I brought to the table. And it is with that lens, that immigrant lens, that not only did I know that I was lucky to be in this country, but I also acutely knew what injustice was and what it could be. I acutely knew what people in power could do to vulnerable populations. And it is with that perspective and with that privilege that I pledged my career to fight for justice, no matter where my community would be. Thank you. And it is in that capacity that I found myself in Flint serving as a pediatrician. But before I get to Flint, I would be remiss if I didn't share one more story. And this is a story that's in my book as well. And it is a story that informs my family history, social justice roots. It is a story that resonates with our current political reality. And it is a story that hopefully will bring us all together. So I want to tell you about my great uncle. His name is Nouri Rufael Kotani. And he left Iraq in the 1930s and came to the United States. He actually came to Boston, to MIT, to study railway engineering. And it was the tumultuous time right after the Great Depression. I think he did a little too much activism, too much rallying, too many protests, because he lost his scholarship and he got kicked out of MIT and he had to go back to Iraq. But that spark, that vision of how the world could be, began here in the United States, and he continued that activism back home, where he spent his entire life fighting for justice. When he went back to Iraq, he helped write the Iraqi Declaration of Independence from British rule, maybe inspired by Paul Revere or Alexander Hamilton. He went on to fight for Palestine's independence from the British. And then he went on to create an organization with this kick-ass name, the Iraqi Association Against Imperialism and Fascism. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that awesome? So in 1937, my great-uncle Nouri left Baghdad, and he traveled with his good friend. There was 2 Iraqis that traveled from Baghdad to Spain to fight in the Spanish Civil War, to fight against Franco and the fascists. So he was part of the International Brigade, truly a concert of colors, because it was people from all over the world to fight this quintessential fight for freedom. And his best friend, his friend that came with him, was an Iraqi Jew, a guy named Seti Abraham Haresh, who traveled that long distance to fight this fight for freedom. And they believed in that progressive, borderless cause, not loyalty to a race, to a religion, or to even a country, but it was bigger than that. It was about a loyalty to justice and freedom for all. And in these strange and mind-boggling times that we are in right now today, where we are once again fighting fascism, I think about my great-uncle Nouri, who had the courage to stand up and risk his life to fight for justice, not because it was easy, but because it was the right thing to do. These stories are part of the fabric of my family history, and to this day, they inform me and my work, and their lessons endure. But these lessons are also part of your family and part of this bigger, larger family that we are in. And I know that we are all side by side, no matter where we may have come from, as brothers and sisters in our ongoing struggles for peace and justice and equality, both abroad and here at home, and absolutely in Flint. So, absolutely. So let's get to Flint. So Flint is what happened. What happened in Flint is so much a story of crisis. It is a story of incredible activism and resistance, and it is a story of profound hope. It is our most emblematic environmental and public health disaster of this young century. It is what happens when the very people responsible for keeping us safe care more about money and power than they care about us or our children. But what happened in Flint is not isolated. It is about the deeper crises that are happening right now in our nation. It is about a breakdown in democracy. We see that happening every day with gerrymandering, voter disenfranchisement, mass incarceration. It is about the disintegration of critical infrastructure due to inequality, austerity. It is a story about environmental injustice that disproportionately affects the poor and the brown. It is about a disrespect for science, for scientific truth, and that is happening today with climate change and the regulations that protect our public health, our air quality, our water quality. But most importantly, the story of Flint is about our abandonment of our civic responsibility, our deep obligation as human beings to care and provide for each other. If we stop believing that government can protect our public welfare and keep all of our children safe, not just our privileged ones, what do we have left? Who are we as a society, as a people, as a nation? The America that I woke up in this morning has changed a lot since I was that little girl. And some things haven't changed at all. People are still running to America. They're trying to. It's not as easy anymore, especially for the brown people, with all our bans and our walls. But it is still the epitome of prosperity for the entire world, the richest country that ever was and ever has been. But there are increasingly two disparate Americas. The America I was lucky to grow up in, and the America that I see every day in my clinic in Flint. I have seen things I wish I had never seen. The things that you run from, not toward. Things that would never be part of any nightmare, let alone a dream. And for too many people, this nightmare is taking place right outside our front doors. Flint is not alone. From the Rust Belt to rural America to the coasts and beyond, black, brown, and white, too many of our nation's children are waking up to that same nightmare. That nightmare of poverty, injustice, racism, lost democracy. It is as if that dream was never meant for some children. As a pediatrician in Flint, I have the best job in the world. I have this incredible privilege of taking care of our Flint children. And that's what gets me up in the morning. They are my absolute inspiration. They are gorgeous and brave and bright and resilient and strong. But our Flint kids happened to be born into a city that was almost bankrupt, a city that was taken over by the state, a city that lost democracy and was under emergency management. And that emergency manager's job was austerity, to save money, no matter what the cost. And you know the rest of the story. To save money, they severed our relationship with Great Lakes water, fresh, pre-treated Great Lakes water, which we had been getting for over a half a century. It was too expensive for this poor, predominantly minority community. And instead, we started drawing water from the local Flint River. But that water wasn't treated properly. And that corrosive water flowed through our pipes for a year and a half. And it leached lead from our plumbing. And lead is a potent, irreversible neurotoxin that has no safe level, that can forever alter the life course trajectory of a child. And for 18 months, the heroic and the persistent people of Flint raised their voices, and they raised their jugs of brown water, and they were dismissed and ignored. At the same time, General Motors, which was born in Flint, stopped using this water because it was corroding their engine parts. Think about that. Our water was corroding engine parts, but the state told the people of Flint to literally relax, that it was okay. Jesse Jackson called Flint a crime scene. Michael Moore, who's from Flint, said the water crisis was not a mistake, calling it a racial crisis that would not have happened in a richer or wider community. But there is another side to the story, and another side of Flint, an important lesson that needs to be learned, and that is what I want to share. Flint is a story about how we came together and fought back, how we resisted. These are incredibly important lessons for today. The birthplace of cars, Flint is where many people have been pushed down and where many have risen. It is where many have fought that good fight and won. And we resisted. The moms, the activists, the pastors, the journalists, the scientists, and so many more. We were fighting for the future that lives and grows inside our children. And finally, through our science and persistence and disobedience and loudness and stubbornness, we spoke truth to power and exposed this man-made preventable crisis. And the house of cards began to fall. And since then, we have been on a path of recovery. To this day in Flint, we are still on filtered and bottled water as our damaged lead pipes are being replaced. But Flint is a city of resilience, and we have rolled up our sleeves, and we are building a model public health program leaning on the incredible science of child development and resilience to buffer the impact of the state-inflicted trauma. We owe this to our children. And that means that for every child raised in a toxic environment, not just toxic with lead, but toxic with poverty, lost democracy, racism, injustice, inequality, violence, there is hope. And now in Flint, as a pediatrician, I often say that I'm literally writing prescriptions for hope. But our hope is real, and our hope is with real resilience-building interventions. And that gets to my favorite lesson of this story and of my book, which I hope that you read. Besides this book being an action-packed kind of telling of the Flint water crisis, this book, What the Eyes Don't See, is more than just about Flint. So don't think you are getting a book that is just about Flint, because this book is about all of us. It is about who we are and who we want to be. It is about the people and the places that we choose not to see in Flint and beyond. And it is a rallying cry to remind us that it is our responsibility, all of our responsibility, to open our eyes and each other's eyes to these problems that we choose not to see. But being awake is not enough. We must take action for what is right. Just like my great uncle Nuri, he took action for what was right, to care and to provide for each other. And this story is a testament to the idea that individuals working together in our village here can make a difference. And that means all of us have an incredible role to play, and there is no time than the present for all of us to be activists and resistors and to provide hope in our communities. Because no matter who we are or what we do or where we live or how you ended up in this country, whether your families have been here for centuries or you came to this country like my family, an immigrant escaping dictatorship and tyranny. And that immigrant story, complete with our Arabic language and our food and our culture and our social justice heritage, is unapologetically and proudly weaved into the story. This is an immigrant story because that is who I am. That is how I see our world. And with all the negative stereotypes today and with all the hate today, it is so important for us to see and to hear about, for everyone to see and to hear about good immigrant stories, about strong, progressive Arab American women using science and facts and being engaged and active and effective in our communities like so many of you. For too long, our positive stories, our American narrative has not broken through. So I will end with a challenge for all of you, for all of us to come together, to each be a piece of the answer, not just for Flint and places like Flint, but for children everywhere who bear the brunt of life's hardest blows. And as MLK said, whatever ship brought us here, and we all came on different ships, we are in this boat together. And that is how healing begins. And that is my story. Thank you, guys. It is an honor.
Sometimes it's a steak knife tearing flesh from bone. When Sam was stabbed, he was the same age as Trey. I am tired and fed up watching my people die every day. Not only in Detroit, Chicago, and New York, but Palestine, Pakistan, Mali, and Congo, Egypt and Syria, Afghanistan to Libya, Iraq to Gitmo, the onslaught continues. But it is here on this soil where our ancestors lay, that our best and our brightest gave their lives for our sake, where the stench of racism and bigotry persist, imperialist workings of fascist consequence. Malcolm's grandson assassinated. They want his side of dead. If you were black in this country, there's a price on your head. With your targets in a t-shirt, in a hoodie and jeans, suits and ties don't make you safe, just easier to bury. Now, I won't tell you not to riot, but don't destroy what is ours. Don't act in haste with ignorance toward those who've done no harm. I hunger for my liberty by any righteous means. We must determine what is necessary, but there is no more time for dreams. There is no freedom, there is no peace, but I'll pray for those who've fallen as this sorry nation devolves en route to hell in a land of injustice for all. Quick crowd check. When I say hip, y'all say hop, hip, hip. When I say American, y'all say dreams. American, American. Take a look into the eyes of a hungry child and tell him he free. Look in the fridge, ain't nothing in the refrigerator to eat. Mama gone off the Hennessy, in love with that kush. Messing with some foul brothers who in love with a bush. Stay in school, stay in school. Where the hell is the books? That wisdom got him suspended, he was talking too much. Walked through the metal detectors, homie on his way to cell block. No, he on his way to phys ed right after calculus. Something's not adding up. Sheriffs at the school every day, no calculators, but yo, they got a police station, gotta control the flow of gangbangers moving under the nose of military recruiters, selling ghetto child fantasies the way the industry does. Either you'll die in these streets or you will die in a war, a slave to a corporation facing life behind bars. Yo, we'll let you ride for your colors. Here's a badge and a gun. American dreams, infinite lies, history told. American dreams, we cattle on this land that they stole. American dreams, a menace to society. Me, American dreams, another brother swinging from trees. Listen, elders quick to judge a youngin' cause his pants sagging. Shorty skirted by her thighs, they can't understand how integration became assimilation. You destroy the foundation, then it all becomes chaos. Bullets in the dark for revolutionary leaders. Preachers stop kicking it with Allah and Jesus. Start talking dollars, false profit off their peoples. Uncle Sam cooked up the crack, coke, and freebase. The composition of a whole generation twisted, and now they pissed off at the world because ain't nobody listening. Microwave society, no right to privacy, culture of celebrity driven by status and property. Everything they see on television telling them a lot of ignorance makes you a little more authentic. Snakes continue to Willie Lynch us. Ain't no future if the past and the present can't decipher these tricks. American dreams, infinite lies, history told. American dreams, we cattle on this land that they stole. American dreams, a menace to society. Me, American dreams, another nigga swinging from trees. American schemes hustle to cash in on $1 billion. Get too big for your britches, hit your head on the glass ceiling. Unless you're willing to compromise. How much will you sacrifice to get a small slither of pie? Cut the roots from your locks for a job you can't stand so that you can get a big house out in the Hamptons. Play the mascot for your new circle of friends. Posting Instagram pictures like we getting it in. Hashtag new money. Hashtag stop fronting. Hashtag I don't know who I am or where I come from. White picket fence for your white collar gig. Should have all else fails, push that white to them kids, moving guns like the Bushes or them bricks like the Clintons, bottle after bottle, Capone and Prohibition, criminal intention and murderous ambition, empire built on vice and pain. It's this American dream.
Walter T. Lacy. Walter T. Lacy, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening. My name is Charles Ferrell. I'm Vice President of Public Programs at the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History in Detroit. It's an honor to be here. It's such an important program. Already, I have the sense this is one of the most important programs that I will experience in doing programming in my career. I want to let you know this program is being live streamed. So if you have any electronic device, if you could silence that device. We're very excited to partner with the Arab American National Museum. Before we get started, I'd like to thank some of the organizers of this important program. As you know, Jamani Salami was deputy director who opened up the program. We thank her, as well as Catherine Grabowski. If Catherine is here, we like to acknowledge these individual leaders who envisioned this program. She's the Humanity Program Coordinator. Also, Rhea Akil. Certainly we appreciate her efforts, and Jazz Dottie Washington. This is a young public ally, very young individual who's had leadership, Jazz Dottie Washington. And of course, this is the 26th year, over a quarter century, of a vision that was started by Ishmael Ahmad. I'd like him to be acknowledged. This is an outgrowth from the 1967 rebellion at New Detroit. We're going to get this party started. I want to say that from my perspective, that artists are some of the most important individuals in our society. It's through them that they channel new ways of looking at life and reality. And it's also artists that are normally locked up first in areas of fascism, so they don't want us to understand and get to the truth. So I'd like to invite to the stage our speakers tonight, artists, activists, Ananya Chatterjea, panelist and performer, artistic director of Ananya Dance Theater, and makes people-powered dances of transformation intersecting women artists of color and social justice choreography. Chatterjea is professor of dance at the University of Minnesota, where she teaches courses in dance studies and technique. She's currently writing her second book, exploring the politics of contemporary dance from a perspective of artists from global communities of color. I spoke to her on the phone and had an immediate connection with this very powerful sister. We'd like to also bring to the stage Ani Cordero, panelist and performer. Here we have a very talented musician and music researcher. Her critically acclaimed 2014 album, Recorda, received accolades from NPR All Things Considered, Alt Latino Soundcheck, Billboard, USA Today, PRI's The World, and more. Her latest album, I'm going to translate, called Dear World, is Cordero's love letter to a complicated world that addresses the theme of immigration, Black Lives Matter, feminism, and government corruption. Government corruption. Please join me and welcome to the stage DeJuan Bland, panelist, a community organizer from Moses in Detroit, and a faith-based organizing coalition. He is a minister, musician, poet, and hip-hop artist. His work centers around youth organizing and bridging the intergenerational divide. Last but not least, a powerhouse, Sacramento Knoxx, first citizen of this country. Panelists and performers, a hardworking interdisciplinary artist with a strong Detroit roots that has built community concerts and workshops that engage many audiences in public spaces all around the city. Knoxx travels nationally and internationally, sharing music performances, blending captured moments in life and creative imagery through large projection motion graphics. I'll let you know that we have some special treats, which you'll see later, this activist advocacy in action. Tonight's theme, state violence. trauma, and healing. Can you give our panel another round of applause, please? Before I start with questions, I think it's always very important to look at definitions. When I searched for the definition of state violence, I was redirected to the term called state terrorism. Terrorism, number one, carried out or sponsored by government, which involves deliberate acts on civilians for the purpose of attaining a political or religious goal. Number two, acts of violence committed by an official state, military, or sponsored by a sovereign government outside of the context of a declared war, which targets civilians, children, families, people, or show a disregard for civilian life in attacking targets, either people or facilities. Very quickly, another definition from the Center on Institutions and Governance from the University of California, Berkeley. State violence, in a broader sense, includes the many indirect ways in which the state authorities preserve their power and discipline their subjects. That's the framework that we'll start engaging these very talented artists, activists. And we're going to proceed with the first question. How do you define state violence, trauma, and healing, and how do you see these elements in your work?
All right. Oh, it's on now. Thank you. So the way that I would define state violence is just any policy or institution that's protected by government that is devaluing the bodies of its citizens, whether that is financial, emotional, spiritual, mental, and all of that. I think the clearest examples that we've had of state violence in our recent history and just in this area that we in is definitely the Flint water crisis, right? You see the people who are supposed to protect the citizens disconnect Flint from the Great Lakes Water Authority to save a couple bucks and end up poisoning the whole city, right? And then you look at Detroit and people forcing a bankruptcy on a city that clearly voted against it, and then excavating from that city all of its most valuable possessions, right? And then leaving the citizens was nothing. And then gentrifying that city after you've taken everything valuable for them. And then the things that you replace it with isn't even for the people who historically take up space in Detroit. So that's state violence. Trauma, in my definition of my world, is anything that is preventing you to be wholly human and just wholly yourself. And being yourself varies for each person, but there are just basic human dignities that we all have. Trauma suppresses that for us, or it gives us hurt and guards to not be those things. And then healing is just the process of reconciling yourself to being wholly human and wholly yourself. And for me, that doesn't mean everything is okay, but I'm me, right? And I feel the liberty to be me at all times.
Thank you, DeJuan.
Thank you. You know, I've danced for so many years, and one of the things I recognize is that our bodies were not meant to be in a state of shock or constant hitting. So when we have that, our bodies, you know, there's a cellular way of understanding violence. There's a cellular way of understanding trauma where you just get stuck in that place and you can't see the expansiveness that is actually supposed to be humanity. So I'm thinking a lot in relationship to this panel and this discussion about Asifa Bano I don't know how many of you have heard of Asifa Bano. She was an 8-year-old girl from a nomadic Muslim tribe in Kashmir. She loved horses. She was playing outside, and she was dragged to, in India, she was dragged to a goddess temple, gang raped, assaulted, and murdered. I am amazed at how much hatred can people's minds hold that this child, her family have not found justice. This happened recently, but the government stood up against, stood up for the rapists who were government servants. To me, that is state violence, and if there is any healing, it is in how we can stand up with 8-year-old Asifa, keep her memory alive, and constantly vibrate with the memory of that child who lost her life with so much pain.
Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. When I look at violence, I've been thinking about violence since we kind of had the idea planted and thinking about before we got here. And I was thinking that violence is in settler society right now, it's a tool that's honored in different ways. And seeing some violence is more honored than others. And just studying and looking at those things. To understand violence that way is a tool, and it's honored through military and police in certain aspects. And it's just this thing continuing to explore and understand, because I understood it from being an oppressed and being from a colonized person, what violence is. But so I continue to look at violence as a tool, and as a constant threat that it's a constant threat and a constant behavior that this organization of the United States of America continues to produce. So I look at violence in that different ways. And then also when we think about trauma, as she shared a second ago, like being shocked and stiff, trauma, you experience trauma, so you won't be able to use your heart or your logic or your hands in certain types of ways, so therefore you're in a state of shock. And when I think about healing, I think about how do we collectively heal in those aspects, maybe from gunshot wounds or spiritual healing or mental healing, and physical, like I just mentioned before, and emotional healing. So I look at healing in those aspects, and coming from a philosophy and a knowledge system of these native indigenous knowledge systems that's been here specifically in this area for a long time. So that's how I look at healing.
Thank you, Sacramento.
You guys covered it really well. So for me, the question of state violence, it's unfortunate that we're now in a moment where it seems ever present, the threat of state violence on so many people, and nobody's actually safe because there's been such a deterioration of rights and such an amplification of misuse of power. So everything that the panelists said, and in addition, like, it's happening on so many different levels that for me the traumatic thing in this moment is that there's so many traumas that sometimes it's hard to know where to direct your energy. I care about Flint. I care about my family in Puerto Rico that is having a similar austerity measure followed by abandonment. So and then I care about the children that are being separated from their parents, and there's so many things that are traumatizing. And so I don't have an answer, actually, and I'm really looking forward to the discussion and to having an open dialogue with all of you, because for me the goal is also to figure out together how do we move to healing, and how do we connect with each other, and how do we see the broader connections between the using of power to hurt so that just a very small group can feel more powerful and have more it's hard for me to understand.
Thank you very much. What the Eyes Don't See, a very important book in the bookstore that we'd like you to take with you. At the Charles Wright Museum, we really believe from our programming that we encourage reading. I just want to bring a couple books to the stage. One is a new book by the great Frantz Fanon, a psychiatrist. And it's a new book called Frantz Fanon, Alienation and Freedom. These are unknown republications, about 800 pages. I just wanted to share, if I could, briefly, his statement on violence. The colonial regime is a regime instituted by violence. It is always by force that the colonial regime is established. It is against the will of the people that other people more advanced in the techniques of destruction or numerically more powerful have prevailed. I say that such a system established by violence can logically only be faithful to itself, and its duration in time depends on the continuation of violence. Frantz Fanon.